Welcome back, and joining me now live from our Ottawa studio is Brian Storseth, the MP himself who has introduced the private members bill to bring freedom back to speech in Canada. Welcome.
Thank you, Ezra. It's great to be here.
I can't tell you how delighted I am to talk with you. I have been hoping that the Conservative government would put forward such a bill as yours for 5 years. And finally it's happened, but why has it taken a private members bill? Tell me what went through your mind when you put down this idea in basically the lottery of private members bills.
Well, when I found out that I had number 15 in the draw, you know, to me it was a no-brainer. I've been working on this issue for a couple of years. I thank you for coming before a committee in 2009. That was actually my committee motion to review the human rights tribunals, and particularly Section 13. And we've been working towards this. I've been working with colleagues to try to make sure that we make some changes to a piece of legislation that is flawed and, quite frankly, has been abused over the last several years.
Well, that's music to my ears. Now, let's talk for a minute about some of the process behind this for our viewers who really want to know what's going on. Now, you said it's 15th in line. Obviously, a lot of MPs have a lot of private members' business. When do you think the 15th in line will actually have its day on the floor of the House of Commons?
Well, the first step was to introduce it. As you know, I introduced it last Friday. Then I believe it'll be beginning of November, we'll have our first hour of debate. And then it'll be a set process from there. Hopefully around the end of November we'll have our first vote on this piece of legislation. And of course I'm going to be working very hard on both sides of the aisle, as freedom of speech is something that really should be a nonpartisan issue. I'm going to be working on both sides of the aisle to try to get as many members of Parliament to support this as I can.
I'm very pleased to hear that last part, because I've often contended that the left used to understand and love free speech as much as the right, but maybe they've forgotten that recently. Your former colleague, Keith Martin, the Member of Parliament from Vancouver Island, has not run again, and he was a champion in the Liberal Party for free speech. Have you identified an ally on the Liberal, or these days the NDP and Bloc, I guess Bloc's almost gone, have you identified an ally on the Liberal or NDP benches to replace Keith Martin?
We don't have one specific individual, but we're working with a number of individuals in both the Liberal Party. It's been a little more difficult with the NDP, but I'm hoping to get some support from their party as well. As you know, the committee did find that there was problems with Section 13 in their review. It was at the time a minority parliament in which the opposition had the majority of the votes. So I'm hoping that common sense can prevail here, and we can set partisanship aside when it comes to doing something right for one of the bedrock principles of our society.
I think that's the right approach. You know, I want to go back to the government side. I mean, there are enough votes on the government benches to slam dunk this bill to make it pass. Can you tell me, though, I mean, you're a private member, you're a backbench MP, you are not a cabinet minister. Do you think that the cabinet will support this, or do you think that they will duck out of the vote and say present, or even vote against it? How solid is the support for it on the government side of the aisle?
Well, first of all, I want to confirm with you, Ezra, I'm not a cabinet minister.
Right.
But you know what? This is something that our party convention in 2008 almost unanimously endorsed. This is something that I know is very important in my riding. And I think I've got good support on my side. I've talked to many of my Conservative members of Parliament, both cabinet ministers and backbenchers. I feel like I've got their support. I feel like this bill has a very good opportunity to pass. But we really need to engage Canadians on this. This is an opportunity. This is why it's important to do it in Parliament. Canadians have an opportunity to have a voice. They need to make sure they're heard, and they need to make sure they email or call their local member of Parliament, let them know how important it is to them as well.
That is a great point. You know what, Ricky, can we put up on the board the Prime Minister's email address again? pm@pm.gc.ca. Now, folks, that's just the Prime Minister's own email address. I agree with our guest, Brian Storseth. You've got to tell your own MP, and if you live in an opposition riding, all the more important to do so. I think, Brian, you're right. From what I've heard, this is largely supported on the government side. I'm not asking you to give away any caucus confidences or any private conversations, but can you tell me, has the Justice Minister or the Prime Minister given you a green light for this, or did they try and slow you down? Are you proceeding in their good graces?
Well, at this point in time, Ezra, as you know, I just introduced the bill. I have worked with legal counsel on both, obviously, the House of Commons side and the Justice side to make sure that everything is in good order. And I don't see any reason why anybody would be opposed to this bill at this point in time. I have not had specific conversations with, and I can't talk about specific conversations that I would have had, but I can tell you that I haven't had any conversations with them at this point in time because we are really in the opening processes. Although I do believe that I do hope to have everybody support in the House of Commons, not just the Justice Minister and the Prime Minister, but Joe Comartin, who is a justice critic on the other side for the NDP. I'm hoping that everybody supports this bill because this really is about freedom of speech in our country and pushing back on the tyrannical bureaucracy need to censor speech in our country. And it's a fundamental bedrock of our society. If we don't have freedom of speech, what good are the other freedoms that go along with it? What good is freedom to assemble or religious freedoms if you don't have the freedom of speech in the first place?
My thoughts exactly. Brian Storseth, the private member who introduced Private Member Bills 304 to strike down the censorship provision. I am so glad you're doing what you're doing. I look forward to hearing regular updates from you. And when it comes close to those November debates, I'm sure you'll come back on the show and maybe bring a new Democrat friend with you.
I look forward to your support. Thank you very much.